Hi everybody, it's alisamurray here in the Sweet Life Kitchen, and today I'm going to show you how to take these gorgeous tomatoes and for you to can them in a water bath can method. I'm going to show you how we first blanch them and then peel them and chop them and stuff them and then use a hot water bath ladle over them and pack them in hot jars and then put them in the water bath canner. So I'm going to do them in steps. The first thing you're going to want to do is wash all your tomatoes, and aren't these just beautiful? They are so gorgeous. These heirloom guys are they're just beautiful. They're so pretty. They're going to look so nice in the jars. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take one tomato at a time since they're so big, and I'm going to put them in a hot water bath real quick. Just blanch them a minute, even less than that, just enough so that the skins will be easy for me to peel off. So I've got some water boiling on the stove now, and that's what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to get some tweezers, well, not tweezers, but some tongs, and submerge this tomato down in there. Really only about a minute to do that. Meanwhile, what I have already gotten set up is the lemon juice, the salt, and the pepper. It's a very simple recipe. Some ice water you're going to need, because as soon as they come out of the hot water, we're going to want to blanch them immediately in ice water, and that's going to help those skins to just peel right off. And then I've got the glass jars are actually not only sterile, but they're also in hot water. So they're going to be actually hot jars. So we're going to have to do hot jars one at a time. So I'll show you how to do that. Normally what I do is I make sure all the jars are sterile, and the lids and the tops, as we talked about in all the other canning episodes that we've done, need to be sterilized. And in order for you to know how long you're supposed to do your water bath canning for every single vegetable, the easiest way to find that out is to go to the Ball website, or go get one of the Ball cookbooks on canning and preserving, so that you know for your altitude and your area what's safe for you and how long they need to stay in there. Really important to do that, and make sure that you don't skip any of those steps, because it's very, very important, and it can make you sick if you don't do it the right way. So that's the first thing. I just wanted to make sure I told you that. And I'll have this recipe down in the comments below, so no worries there. But I just thought these guys were so beautiful. I did not want to make a salsa. I wanted to make, just can them so that we're able to enjoy them looking pretty in the pantry. Call me a geek, a kitchen geek. And then not really put a whole lot of spice on them either. I'm going to leave them with just some salt and pepper, because I want to be able to, when I use them, pull them out and make my own sauce fresh at that point with whatever fresh vegetables I want to add to it, or fresh herbs. So that's the very first thing that I wanted to kind of show you to do. So we're going to take this tomato out of here, and we're going to put it right immediately into some ice water. And that skin is already wanting to come right off, so pretty easy to do. And it should just peel right off. This is the way Nana used to show me how to do it, and they do. The skin just comes right off. Look at that, guys. It's just easy, easy, easy. And so I'm going to peel this tomato and get the skin off of it. I'm actually going to move all of these ingredients that we have over here down here, just so you can see better what I'm doing, what I'm up to back here. Just peel this off. Look at that, guys. It just comes off in one piece. And by not leaving it in there but for more than a minute, you really are going to make it easy for you to handle it. It won't be too hard for you to handle it. So there's that. I'm going to get me a towel, because I can see that I'm very quickly going to get messy over here. I'll rub it on my apron for the moment, and then I'll do a towel in a second. I'm going to get another tomato down in there. And I recommend, since you're dealing with hot water, you might as well just go ahead and put some tongs beside this hot water, so that you can just get them in and out, and fish them in and out of there pretty easy. And I think I can get 3 of these actually in at one time. So I'll do that, and I'm going to find a towel real quick. Washcloth will do fine too. Just easy breezy. All right, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pull that other 2 tomatoes out and peel them, because I want to show this to you in steps. So I'll pull this one out, put it in the cold water. You know, one of the challenges we have as gardeners and as cooks too is finding, and not so much today as it used to be when Nana was alive, but finding all this fresh produce year round. And what Nana would do is they'd get everything in from the garden, and then they would process it from the garden, and they'd can it and put it back for the winter. And she would have tomatoes, whole tomatoes and diced tomatoes, and just really beautiful in terms of the way that they tasted. They stayed with that same fresh from the garden that it's kind of hard to get when you buy it from the store. So it's one of the nice things about having tomatoes that you can take from your garden and then figure out a way to preserve them so that they're shelf stable and you can use them. Because I make homemade sauces and homemade Italian sauces and a lot, but I usually do it from fresh tomatoes. And these tomatoes are beautiful, and they're not going to be tomatoes like this, in the fall. It's just, they're not always around, so it's kind of nice to be able to take what you've got and make it just beautiful and something that you can use right out of your pantry when you're ready to make your Italian or your Latina dishes or your Indian dishes, all those different kinds of recipes that we make in the kitchen. A lot of them require tomatoes. And these are just gorgeous. They're just really beautiful. Just peels off. See that? Just peels right off. And you want to just get them with the skins off of them. And then I'll show you what we do next. We're going to dice them up and pack them in a hot jar, which is a little bit different from what we normally do, because normally I just do the sanitized jars really easy and then leave them out on the counter and pack them whether they're cold or they're hot. They're not necessarily always really hot jars, but for tomatoes, there's a low acidity. We've got to make sure we follow the directions. We got to make sure we have added lemon juice to our process before we put them in the water bath canner, so that we've got the right level of acidity to make sure that we don't get sick. So that's really important. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these hot jars out of the pot, and I'm actually going to use for this my handy dandy jar holder that I always get when I'm pulling them in and putting them out of the pans for the water bath can. So we've got a hot jar here. And what I want you to do is I want you to take your knife, and you can dice them any way you want to. If you want them in chunks, depends on how you want them to look in your jar, but put them in there. I want there to be different colors, so I'm going to do them that way so that the different colors actually show up through the jar. And just be sure you don't stick your finger on that hot jar, because it's hard to remember that those jars are hot, because I'm used to working with them at room temperature after they've been sterilized. So just have to be sure I don't forget that. And you take your tomatoes, and because they are warm, I'm going to want you to use a ladle or something to kind of push them down in there. We always like to pack them pretty tight, but make sure that they're good and tight in there. I have another pan back here, or pot back here rather, on the stove where I've got water, just plain water that is boiling, and I'm going to pour that hot water, instead of using the brine like we always talk about with the pickles, the beets, the cucumbers, that sort of thing. I'm going to take that hot water and ladle it directly over the tomatoes in the jar so that there's some liquid in there with them. And the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add, y'all can see that, I hope, how pretty that is. I'm going to add some salt and some peppercorns. the pickling salt is what I'm going to add for the salt part of it, but I'm going to actually take some whole peppercorns just because I think they look prettier in the jars. Let's see if I can stick this here so y'all can see that better. There. That way I've got a messy station and I've got a non-messy station. So I'm going to take my cup back here and I'm going to get a little bit of this water that's just boiling, and I'm going to pour that over the tomatoes. And don't forget about the headspace. You know, we talked about that in other episodes. That headspace is the space between the lip of this jar and the very tippy top where that seal goes on. So I want to make sure that you see that and you know that that's where your liquid really needs to stop. You don't want to pour it all the way to the top. I want to make sure that you've got some space in there, because whenever there is the water bath canning, you're going to want to make sure that you've got some space for that jar to seal. I'm going to take a pinch of salt, take some peppercorns and throw them on top, and then I'm going to take my measuring spoon over here and I'm going to take a full tablespoon of lemon juice. Really important step here, and it's bottled, it's not squeezed. That makes sure that I've got the right acidity, and I'm going to pour that in there too. And then I'm going to take my lid and I'm going to take my top, my screw top, as Nana would say, and I'm going to carefully put that on there. And see how hot that still is. It's warm. It's warm enough I can touch it. Okay, so there's the first jar of the tomatoes, and so we're just going to continue to do this process over and over and over again. And then when we get done with that, then I'm going to put them in the hot water bath, and they're going to be in the hot water bath for I think 45 minutes. I'm going to check that, and I'm going to let you know for sure. I've got to look at the altitude for Texas because everybody's different. We talked about that too. I don't know if you remember me telling you, you got to check that because that'll determine how long those things stay. So while we're doing that chopping, I want to go ahead and pull another tomato into the hot water bath and get them going in there. And I'm going to pull another, maybe able to get this out of here like this. No, nope, nope, don't even want to try that. I'm going to do it this way, safer. Pull that out, set that right there, keep chopping up tomatoes. They really are beautiful. I just love heirloom tomatoes. It tastes different than a regular tomato, and they look gorgeous. Just really a pretty addition to any plate. So nice. Let's grab a little yellow bit. Add a little more color to the jar. These make nice gifts too. I don't know if you guys are into giving family members gifts from the garden. A lot of my DIYs are really cool gifts to give to family too during the holidays. And bread, boy, they do love my bread. Bread is one of those things that everybody enjoys. And I love it because you can take the bread and you can dress it up, put cinnamon and sugar on it, add a few pieces of fruit or even nuts if nobody's allergic to nuts, and then you can turn it into kind of a sweet dessert bread, or you can put herbs in it and cheese and bake it up, and that's really nice too. These are just gorgeous, guys. Look at that. It's so pretty. I almost hate to be canning them. I want to be eating them. But we'll get some more. I want to be sure we put them back in the pantry so we've got them for this fall. And you know, you go out and try to find an heirloom tomato, or you try to grow an heirloom tomato, and you can't do that year round. It's just too hot in Texas for sure, and during the winter months it's not feasible either. So it's always nice to, when you find them or make them, can them up. Same process. We're going to go in here and I'm going to put a little bit of water. It's in the back here, and use that water and pour that over there, paying attention to the headspace. It's about a quarter of a cup. And then I'm going to take the peppercorns, again, same thing, and then a pinch of salt and a full tablespoon of lemon juice from the bottle. The thing about this recipe that's different from doing the pickled beets and the pickled cucumbers and peppers and all that is that because we're using these hot jars and we have to go through the process of blanching the tomatoes, you really have to do a jar at a time, which can be a little bit aggravating and time consuming, but once you get your method down, your rhythm down to what you're doing, it shouldn't be too big of a deal. All right, there's jar number 2. Those are just beautiful, just beautiful. Okay, this one's ready to come out. Skin's already peeled up on it. Popped around the sides, as Nana would say. And I'm gonna grab one of these. They're different colors, and I want the different colors to show up in the jars. So what I've got back here on the stove, just to kind of review, is 2 big pots filled with jars in hot water. And then in the very back, I've got another pot that's got water that's hot that we're using to ladle over the tomatoes. And then I've got another pot that's boiling water where we're using to blanch the tomatoes and get their skins off. So there's 4 different things going on back there on the stove. And I always recommend getting everything ready before you get started so that once you get started with it, you don't have to stop and figure out where this is or where that is. You just sort of have everything lined up like an assembly line. This one's hot as blazes. Whew. Hot. Can't even hardly touch it. See if I can cut it in half and give it a minute to kind of get some air and cool down a little bit. Warm. Okay. All right, let me grab this one. Stick that in the ice water. That one, see, that peel's already starting to come off. Stick that in the ice water. I'll stick you back in the ice water. I might have forgotten to put you in the ice water. That might be why you were burning my finger. Okay, so now I'm gonna go grab another jar. Put it down. Keep cutting. Keep dicing them up. Putting them in. I love them when they're part red and part green and part yellow and part pink, and they're just gorgeous. I think this one's a pineapple variety. Or these big girls right here, they're like the size of the palm of my hand. They're really big. They're just beautiful though, I tell you. You really can't beat it. They're just gorgeous tomatoes. Make no mistake about it. Heirloom is the way to go, especially if you want a gorgeous looking pantry like I do. What would be in a Sweet Life kitchen, right? You'd expect me to have different colored heirloom tomatoes in there and they're looking their best, waiting to be put into recipes, just shining in that pantry. So pretty. Just keep on keeping on. Keep on cutting and dicing and sticking them in there. We'll get us another hot water. Ladle that down over the top. It's perfect. Grab ourselves a pinch of salt. You don't have to do the salt if you don't want to. If you're watching your salt intake, you certainly don't have to do that. And if you think you might want to use these tomatoes for something besides a savory dish, you might want to leave out the pepper too. And just be sure you use the lemon. But for me, I'm all about salt and pepper on my tomatoes. So there's the lemon juice. Be sure you pack that down in there. Get rid of all the bubbles. If you see any bubbles. I haven't been seeing too many bubbles today in this process. All right, grab another top and another screw lid. Let's see. So pretty, guys. So pretty. Cannot tell you. So pretty. All right, let's get another tomato over there in that boiling water and get it going. Let's get this big guy. May be able to set her down in there. Not too hard to do that. All right, so grab another jar. Peel another tomato. Look at that one. Look how beautiful that is, guys. Look at that gorgeous green stripe on that. So gorgeous. It's just beautiful. It's crazy. We'll go ahead and get rid of all of this and go ahead and put this in there, since this is already leftover chops from the other tomatoes from the other jar we were working on, before I start on another one. It's a little bit messier, isn't it, guys, than the cucumbers? It's a little bit messier. Just because of all the tomato juice everywhere and seeds everywhere. That's all right. It'll clean up, as Nana would say. Not a big deal. Just be sure you pack them down in there good so you can get as much in there as you can. And you've got the juices of the tomato going for you too, whereas with the other vegetables and stuff, sometimes we don't have that many juices. So sometimes you just have to rely on whatever brine or whatever else you're using to put in there with it. So guys, we're back. Unbelievable, isn't it? I had hoped for 6 jars and I ended up getting 9. It's just amazing. They're just beautiful. I've checked them for bubbles. You want to use your ladle and tap down the bubbles, get all the bubbles out of there. If you do need to add a little bit of extra water, don't worry about that, but just make sure that you pay attention to your headspace. And everything's been wiped down, and now I've got my 2 pots on the back stove boiling, and one is ready and the other one's almost ready. And so we're going to use our special tongs again, and we're going to lay these guys down into the water bath. And you want to make sure that there's about 1.5 inches above each of these cans. As you add the cans, you're going to realize, you know, where you're going to end up in terms of how many cans you can stick in there, and also where that water level is. Obviously, when you put them in the water, even though you've got it boiling right now, it's not going to be boiling anymore. So once it starts to boil with the jars in the water, that's when I want you to set your timer for the correct time that you were supposed to do the water bath can for a tomato. And in this case, in Houston, Texas, it's for 45 minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and start with the first pot that's ready and lay these jars down, not lay them, but laying them, you know, face up just like this, down into the water. So there's one. And there's 2. And there's the 3rd one. All right, so I'm going to get 4 per pot. So we're going to have a straggler, probably. So I'll have to just be in the kitchen a little bit longer than I'd planned. One thing I want you to pay attention to is, we talk about this every time I show you how to can anything, but these are not sealed, right? You can hear them. And what you're doing when you're putting stuff into a water bath, you're creating a pressure situation for your vegetable in that jar, and that seal is going to lock it down and seal it so that it's protected from getting bacteria and potentially causing you and your family to be sick. So when they come out of the water bath, you're going to lay them on a towel, separate it out, probably about 1.5 inches, 2 inches each. Just give them some space. Don't want to lay them as close as they are together here, or rather set them down. And then you may hear them pop, and you may not hear them pop. But before you put them in the pantry, I want you to check them and make sure that they're all sealed. If you get a little pop at all, that means it didn't seal, and it's not a big deal. You just stick it in the refrigerator, and you can enjoy it today and this week with your recipes. But you do not want to put anything in the pantry that is not completely sealed down, just because it's not safe for your it's not stable for your pantry. But I'm gonna go ahead and put these guys in as well, because the other one on that back stove was just about ready to boil, and it's boiling now. So I'm gonna lay this one in, and then I'm gonna set my timer once the water gets to be boiling again. And then after I get done with letting them boil, I'm going to pull them out and stick them on the towel, and we'll check them. And then I'll be right back. We'll see you soon. Take care. Hi everybody, we're back again, and this time we are on the last stage of our canning of our tomatoes with our water bath project. So the timer has gone off. It's been 45 minutes. We're getting ready to pull these jars out of the water bath canning, and then I'm going to lay them on this towel to dry and to get set, and hopefully we'll hear a little pop. If we don't, we know how to check that. Remember, I showed you how to check that. You'll make sure that the seals are there. I went ahead and left the straggler out so I could show you. Remember, this means it goes to the refrigerator. I'm not going to touch that right now because it's too hot, but if it does not pop, or if you hear a pop, it means it's sealed. Make sure it's down tight and you have no wiggle room whatsoever in that lid. Once that's done, you can just lay them into your pantry or slide them into your pantry, and they're good. They're shelf stable for you to use anytime you need to for your recipes for up to a year. And it's just a wonderful way to take something from the garden or from your farmer's market and make it last throughout the fall season and into those months that we don't have those fresh heirloom tomatoes that we can just readily go out and find or create in our gardens as well. Listen, I hope that you guys have found some value in this. I know that canning can be very daunting, for me anyway. I mean, watching my grandmothers do it is one thing, doing it myself is a whole nother matter. And it's one of those things where if you get everything lined up and you kind of get a rhythm, a method to your madness, so to speak, then you can knock out a whole entire harvest in an afternoon for sure. I usually try to do the tomatoes one day and the cucumbers the next day, or try to just process things as they come through and not let them pile up in the kitchen, because that's a way that you end up with a lot of food waste, and that's really non-productive if you spend all that time working in your garden to try to get things to grow. So anyway, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this, and if you have found any value in it, please do me a favor and like and share. Let your friends know what's going on with it, so that if they're interested in trying to do that with their garden, or to try to figure out how to can something in their kitchen, that they can certainly look at that and know that the recipes are there below, as well as the steps on how to do it from the beginning all the way to the very end. So you can stop and record and press rewind and whatnot till you get it figured out. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care.